The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome everyone to today's webinar. My name is Rishab. I'm a marketing associate at Struxsoft Solutions, part of Great Tech Group, and I will be your host today. Joining me is Alex, our application specialist, who will be taking us through sheathing and subassemblies in our cloud production management software, Onyx. Before we begin, please note that we will be taking live questions at the end of the webinar. If you have a question, you can raise your hand in the GoToWebinar dashboard. Also, please make sure that your mic is working correctly. You can also ask questions during the webinar by typing them into the questions tab of the webinar dashboard. And of course, you can do the same at the end of this webinar. That's it from me. Hope you enjoy the webinar. Alex, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Rishab. Welcome everybody to this week's webinar. As Rishab mentioned, we're going to be looking at using our subassemblies that we've modeled inside of our MWF environment and then bringing that into Onyx. So we're going to be looking at creating CNC files specifically focused on the subassemblies. So I'm not going to spend the webinar kind of building up subassemblies and showing you the whole process from scratch. We do have some tech tips as well as other webinars posted on our YouTube page if ever you guys want to see those. And then once we get our subassemblies uploaded into Onyx, we're also going to have a quick look at the nailing and routing machine, which will allow us to cut our sheathing panels and placing the nail lines, the fastener lines. So I've got a panel that's already been created here in this model. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about what I've done with it. So we'll notice that there are some sheathing panels here on the outside. And that was created through our multi-layer tools right here. So beforehand, just a quick little refresh. We're going to make sure to have our Revit wall type associated with our MWF templates. So my structural layer template is here. And then because I want to be using sheathing, I also assigned a sheathing template to the plywood layer, the substrate layer. Once this was done, I'm able to then select my wall, go into the operations and hit quick create. And then I got my framing. Now, with the door and the window, I went ahead and added subassemblies to the framing, a little bit different for both. The door, what I've done, if I just hide the door for a second, we'll notice that if I select this header and I go into my properties to the left, we've got a VimSF subassembly parameter, which is panel 319-4. And then if I pick my king and the cripples, we'll see that this subassembly remains with the same number, which is 4. Then with the window, let me just hide this as well. So I've got this, this built-up header. So if I select a member of it, it's going to be, again, panel 319, number 3. And I've actually separated the different subassemblies that are framing this window. So I've got these 2 kings here on the side. These are part of subassembly 1, and then the kings on the opposite side will be subassembly 2. So how I got to this, let me just bring back my door and window, is through my markers. So for my window here, I added a marker. The one that I'm using is called the multiple built up, and I call it subassemblies. So once we jump into here, just move this up a bit. I pick the box header. So I pick the header configuration that I wanted. And then right down here at the bottom of your screen, you have this checkbox to turn this into a subassembly. You'll have to pick the subassembly option that you've created. So you can use a generic built up or you can create your own. Again, this is something you can see in a past video if you would like. Once this is selected, I also went through and created it for my king built ups. And this is what was allowing us to have those 4 different codes basically. So subassembly 1, anything that was in this built up header, subassembly 3, and then the kings on the side here were 2. And then this entire setup here for the door is 4. And that was through using a different marker, just called the light gauge steel Subassemblies. All right. So with these created, we can now upload this data into Onyx and look at how we can generate CNC output based off of these, the naming conventions for the subassemblies. So you'll go here to Onyx Upload Center. For anybody who is either new to Onyx, there's a lot of content as well that you can look up. Basically, the process to getting this panel into Onyx would be to upload the sections. So any members that are building up your panel, I've already done this, but just to give you an idea of what the screen would look like, you would pick your tracks and your stud members, make sure that the section shapes are the right ones, and then you would hit upload. And this works with the sheathing panels as well. So just to show you, I've already uploaded these different sizes to my Onyx platform. And again, just in case some of you may not be aware of what Onyx is, it's a cloud-based service that we have now, which allows us to upload the information from our model, send it to the cloud. And once we jump into this, we'll see, like I said, a few things which will allow us to generate the CNC output for our machines. You can create reports. You can jump in and manipulate the operations directly on the cloud. And it allows to take the user out of Revit, and just as long as you have a tablet, your computer, a phone, you can log into this website and start manipulating your data for the CNC output. So once the sections are uploaded, next thing I do is just upload my panel. I'm going to hit upload panels. I'm going to select the panel that I want to upload, and then I want to just make sure that all those components are showing up green. So that means everything is in Onyx already, and this panel will be uploaded. Okay, so successfully uploaded the one. I can get out of here and jump into the Onyx website. The first thing we're going to do, again, just to kind of make sure that everything is working, we're going to go to our component types first. So these are all those families that we just loaded in. I have quite a few right now, but just for this specific project, I believe there's only 2 different families. So I'm going to select everything just to make sure I don't forget. I'm going to assign a machine. For today, I'll use the Howick machine and then hit save. So now it's going to assign a machine to all these components, and this will allow us to start generating the CNC output. Next thing we're going to do is jump into our projects. Oh, actually, let's just look at the machine settings real quick. So I just assigned a Howick machine. Now, again, depending on what you guys have, you'll get your roll former with the proper machine assigned to your account. You'll create the settings for them. And this will also work for the nailing and routing machine, which is what we're going to be looking at after in order to cut our sheet panels and adding the fastener lines. So if I jump into this, we've got a couple options here as far as the machine options go. Okay. And I'm actually going to bring this down to 2. Okay, this should be saved now. Perfect. So I'm going to go to my projects, and I'm going to go find that panel that was uploaded just a few seconds ago. I'm going to go to my panel manager, and it was panel 319. So once I select this panel here, at the bottom of our screen, we're going to have a members grid. Now this is going to show me the different components to this panel. So what I'm going to do is actually, I'm probably already filtering some stuff here, so I'm going to clear everything. So this is what we would have for the panel. All right, and as we see, there's a column here called subassembly names. So these columns can be opened by hitting the 3 little dots on any of these headers, and then pulling up the information that you want to focus on. So for today, as I mentioned, we want to be able to generate CNC output based off of the subassemblies. So you'll come in here, you'll turn on the subassembly name. And now you'll see that based off of what we had in that Revit model, you can now see the different groupings of these members. So next thing, there's two methods that I would use for filtering. You can either grab this header and just drop it in this this gray space here, and that's going to filter out. Oh, let me actually add how many items per page we see. Perfect. And now it's going to create these different trees that you can dock. So you can see if you wanted to generate the CNC files for the door, which was, I believe, the SubAssembly 4. Let me just go back and verify here. Yeah, so this entire door framing was SubAssembly 4. So I can go here, open this up, and then I'll pick my members. And then I'll go ahead and download the CNC file for it. This is going to generate a zip file down here. We can open up. And for Howick, we're looking at these Excel files, but it could be different depending on the machine that you own. And once that was done, now notice that this is empty. If I go back up here and I select my panel once again, this will fill back up with the remainder of the items. Okay. And if I actually just want to focus on something here, this partial change. So the status of my panel has now become partial. That means that you've downloaded the CNC file for certain components within the panel, but it's not the entire panel that's been, sent to CNC output in order to start rolling everything. So what we can do now, just to finish up on this example, is I'll filter in a different method. So we'll say filter by contains, and I'm looking for something that has the number 319 with subassembly 3. And now I'll get everything that was part of subassembly 3. I'll select these and download CNC. And then I'll go back in here and download the rest in one shot. Let's come back here. We're going to clear that filter. And now I'll grab whatever is remaining. And you can actually change the status here as well. So right now, because I'm seeing only what is new, it's easier for you to not pick the same components a second time and download the CNC files again. So if I was to clear this, for example, we would still see the subassembly 3 and 4 set up as downloaded. So if I put this back to new, and I have everything selected, and I download the remaining files, we will then see that our panel up here has now changed from partial to downloaded. So now it's safe to say everything that was part of this panel has now been sent to a CNC output file. All right, so I'm going to close this, and we're going to jump on the second section of this webinar, which would be for the nailing and routing machine. So I'm going to pick panel 4. Okay, so it brings us to the panels page, and then we're going to jump into the CNC editor. Okay, so I'm just going to reset this from the example I did just this morning. Okay, so now we've got a panel. I'm actually going to turn on the transparent filter so that we can see that there's members underneath. So I got these full sheets. Now, inside of the CNC editor, this is where typically you would be able to control the operations. So if you needed to add extra operations, move the ones that are already placed, delete some, this is the environment in which we would work. And then for today, we're actually looking at this generic nailer. Now, this is what I have as a nailing and routing machine. Depending on what you own, again, you may have a couple of these tools that will be changed, but out of the box, this is what we would get. And now what I can do, if I just flip this to the top view, is I can size the sheathing. So I'm going to pick my machine that I created earlier for sizing the sheets and hit run. It's going to route my opening, and we will also see, if I just zoom in here a little bit, and I'm going to tab to select this, the RSO points. So around your opening, it's placed these four RSO locations, and this is based off of the origin marker that we have right here at the bottom of our panel. Okay, so later on when I generate the files, we'll see exactly where all of these are placed. Next thing after sizing the sheathing is I'd like to do the generate fastener line tool. So this is automatically going to generate your nail lines across the panel. So you can use this method, or you can use the method where you're going to be manually drawing lines. So the first one we're going to do is the automated version. So again, it's going to ask me to pick which machine that I want to use. I'm going to hit generate. And let me just zoom in here a little bit. Okay. So now we've got our nail lines. The nails are showing up here in the locations based off of the offsets that we placed in the machine settings. Now, in order to control these, you need to actually activate the nail line tool. This is where you manually draw, and this is going to give me an error if I try to draw here. Okay, so as soon as I try to draw something, there's no layer. So what you need to do is right here on the right side, you've got a layer for your structural components, and you've got the one for the sheathing. So make sure this is selected, and this will allow you to start drawing nail lines directly into the panel. While this is active as well, without hitting any of these draw tools, I can select the nail line, okay, in its entirety, and you have your dimensions here right off to the side, so you can control based off of the dimensions where you can move the lines. And you can also change right down here, select fastener lines, or you can do select individual fasteners. So if I switch my option, this will allow me to actually pick one at a time, or I can go through these by holding control and start selecting the different fasteners that we have. And again, we'll see the dimensions up here. So if you needed to adjust the distance between them, you can come and start inputting data like this. Okay. And then I actually want to go back now to my line here because there's a couple more options. So if I pick a line, you'll see here in the properties list that you can change the type mark to perimeter or infill. You can also adjust the spacing. So right now, if I pick something like this, and I switch this to, let's say 4, we'll see now that the fasteners are coming in a little bit tighter. So you have control over this. So even though your machine setting was created, you still have control in this environment to manually do some changes. And again, if I just go back to the drawing tool here, as I mentioned, there's one more thing I'm going to do. So I'm going to go ahead and let me put a line that kind of overlaps something, just like this. And then I'll show you something that happens after. So we've got the last tool here, which is the validate fasteners. So you can run this before starting to generate your files. And then it's going to go ahead and look at any kind of, if I just leave my tooltip here, anything that's colliding will show up basically in a red color. Or even in this case here, this is probably too close to the dimple location based off of the machine settings that we had set up. Okay, so then you can come in here and manually either remove these, change the position of where they are. Okay, and once this is all done, so I'm actually just going to go back into my drawing and remove these random lines that I designed. There we go. So once these are all placed, and we're ready to generate the CNC files, you will come back to the General tab, and similar to when you were, again, anybody who's used Onyx before, if you've made manipulations with operations, it's important that you publish the changes so that when you download the CNC files, it knows to grab the latest version of the panel and not the original version. So I'm going to hit publish. And then again, if I just leave my mouse over here, you'll just see it says that it publishes to the final CNC output. And then I can download my CNC file from here. Now, you can download based off of this panel, but what I'm going to do, just because right now it doesn't affect the status of our panel, if I come back here to the panel manager page, I select panel 4, you'll notice here that you've got profile status, sheathing status. Okay, so if I download my CNC from here, rotate. Perfect. Transfer is complete. I've got my file. Now we'll see that the sheathing status is set to downloaded and the profile status is set to download. And then the sheathing order, this is my first one. Okay, so now everything has been uploaded. And just to verify, so you've got your members right here. Again, this is Howick. So this is for all the operations. But what we wanted to look at today was for sheathing. So you'll get 3 different files. You've got the framing fastener coordinates, you've got the sheathing board fastener coordinates, and you've got the RSO coordinates that we were seeing around our openings that were routed out. So you'll get your XY locations. And then if I open the sheathing board fastener as well, just expand this a bit. So you got your infills and the perimeters. All right. You get these 3 files created based off of sheathing. And let me just exit out of here. And the change. Now, if you had downloaded the file from within the CNC editor, you'd get the exact same files. The only difference is currently the status would not change when you do single panel within the editor. So hopefully this will have piqued interest for a few of you if you haven't already gotten your hands on Onyx. Again, the sub-assemblies, being able to filter for them within Onyx and generate files is really helpful. So feel free to reach out to the team if you need a hand, if you want to get your hands on Onyx and give this a try. And if you need any help setting up sub-assemblies in your model in order to get them into Onyx, we'll be more than happy to give you a hand with that. I'm going to let Rashab close up this webinar for today, and I hope to see you guys soon on the next Onyx webinar.
All right, thank you, Alex. So we now have time to take any questions. And again, you can raise your hand through the webinar dashboard or type it in the questions tab. And I'd like to remind everyone that the recording of the presentation will be sent through tomorrow via email and released early by the end of the day on our social media channels. So please feel free to share the recording with any of your colleagues. So we're going to wait a few more seconds to see if there are any other questions. All right, it looks like a wrap for today. If there are any other questions after this webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. Our contact details will be provided along with the recording tomorrow. If you would like to have a one-on-one demonstration with one of our product experts, we will be happy to set that up for you. And we will now be ending the webinar. Thank you again, Alex, for the presentation, and thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope you have a great day.